A mall can look dead from the parking lot and still be worth millions on paper. That sounds strange until you stop thinking like a shopper and start thinking like a real estate owner. A failing mall is often not being kept alive by strong shopping demand at all. It is being kept alive by land value, debt deals, tax reasons, legal agreements, and future redevelopment plans. That is why some American malls feel empty for years and still do not fully disappear. In this video, we will break down the land, the debt, the city politics, the tenants, and the redevelopment game. The first big reason sits under the building, not inside it. The land is often worth more than the old stores sitting on top of it. Many malls were built at major highway intersections with roads, power, sewer lines, and huge parking lots already in place. That kind of site is very hard to rebuild from scratch in a mature suburb. So even if the retail inside looks tired, the dirt under it can still be extremely valuable. To a shopper, the mall feels like a failing place to buy shoes or eat pretzels. To an investor, the mall may look like a future site for apartments, hotels, clinics, restaurants, and offices. That is why a dead mall often becomes a holding pattern for a future real estate play. The next reason is less visible, but it may be even more powerful. Debt keeps many weak malls alive much longer than the public expects. In 2025, one commercial mortgage snapshot showed about $83 billion in CMBS loans tied to 210 mall properties maturing within 12 months. That same snapshot showed about $234 billion in those mall loans were already non-performing. It also showed $88 billion were already in special servicing, which means the loans were in trouble and under extra handling. Then another $92 billion in mall loans were maturing in the following 12 months. That is a huge wall of debt, and a huge wall of debt changes behavior. When that much money is tied up, lenders and owners do not always rush to shut the place down. They may extend the loan, restructure terms, recapitalize the project, or keep the mall limping while they search for a better exit. So the dead mall you see may still be very active as a file on the desks of lenders, lawyers, servicers, and tax advisors. Another reason malls hang on is that closing one is messy in ways most people never see. A mall is often not one simple building with one simple owner. The anchor stores, smaller store spaces, parking fields, and outside parcels may be split among several different owners. Some of those pieces may also be tied together by old legal agreements that were written decades ago. That means one owner may want apartments, another may want to sell, and another may want to hold. Those different interests can slow everything down for years. Even if everybody agrees the old enclosed mall is weak, they may still disagree on what should replace it. That is how a dead mall becomes stuck in a long legal and financial middle zone. Cities also have strong reasons to avoid a fast collapse. A slow, awkward transition is often easier for a town than a giant dark ruin. Malls still affect property tax revenue, sales tax revenue, local jobs, and the value of nearby land. If a mall fully collapses, the political damage can spread beyond the property line. Nearby businesses may suffer, surrounding land values may drop, and the city may look neglected. So local governments often support interim uses or gradual redevelopment instead of instant shutdown. A dead but open mall can be easier for city leaders than a dead and abandoned one. Some stores stay for simple reasons that have nothing to do with glamour. A tenant may still make a modest profit in that location, even if foot traffic is much lower than before. Another tenant may have a workable lease and decide moving costs are worse than staying. Relocation is expensive. Build-out is expensive. New rent can be higher. So a weak mall can keep a handful of practical tenants for longer than people expect. That small amount of activity can help cover some operating costs while bigger plans take shape. The mall also stops being only a shopping place and starts becoming a mixed-use shell. This is where the story gets interesting, because retail is no longer the only use that matters. Many fading malls now host gyms, churches, medical clinics, government offices, libraries, colleges, food halls, and entertainment venues. Some spaces become call centers, some become self-storage, some become public service sites. Those uses may not save the classic mall feeling, but they keep the property active. A place can stop functioning as a traditional mall long before it stops functioning as real estate. That is the key idea running through this whole story. Even the statistics can hide what is really happening. A 2025 U.S. commercial real estate report said retail was still relatively tight compared with some other sectors, but it was softening. That report said net absorption in retail turned negative and annual rent growth slowed to 1.7%. It also said malls and neighborhood centers posted losses. But some vacancy reduction came from shrinking inventory, not from strong new demand. That means a mall can look better in a statistic while it is actually being dismantled, repurposed, or carved apart. The numbers may improve because the old mall footprint is getting smaller, not because the classic model is getting healthy again. Investors still care because the location can solve a different problem than shopping. Huge parcels with road access are rare, especially in built-out suburbs. If you want to create a mixed-use district with apartments, healthcare, dining, and open space, an old mall site can be perfect. The roads are there, the parking is there, the utility lines are there, and the land has often been paid for and shaped over many decades. Starting from raw land can be much harder than reworking a broken mall site. That is one reason distressed malls can attract opportunistic buyers. They may buy at a discount after financial trouble, then slowly change the use. The goal is often not to save the enclosed mall at all. The new playbook is often called demalling, not mall rescue. Developers often carve away anchor boxes first, because those giant spaces are easier to repurpose. One old department store can become a gym, a medical center, or a different kind of commercial space. Excess parking can become restaurant pads, health buildings, or multifamily housing. Housing matters a lot because apartments create built-in foot traffic for the rest of the site. Instead of trying to lure everyone from miles away for a weekend mall trip, the site gains people who live there every day. That shift matches how many consumers now prefer density, convenience, and mixed uses. People want places where errands, food, fitness, and home are closer together. That is very different from the old model of a giant enclosed mall built around department stores. Department store decline is another major reason classic malls struggled so badly. Anchor spaces historically paid very low rent compared with how much space they took up. For a long time, those anchors still mattered because they pulled in traffic for the smaller stores. When the anchors weakened, the whole balance changed. Now owners are often more interested in replacing those weak anchors with stronger uses than in protecting the old format. A redevelopment panel on older mall properties highlighted several recurring obstacles. Different owners often want different outcomes, which slows action. Entitlement and zoning issues can block or delay new plans. Local markets may already have too much retail space, and consumer demand has shifted toward places with green space, convenience, and mixed-use design. So the owner may be looking at a site with value, but also at a long and complicated path. That complexity creates the strange condition we now see across America. The mall feels dead to shoppers, but it is still very much alive in negotiations. The financial logic can look backward if you only think about shopping. Why keep an ugly mall half open with faded signs and empty halls? Because a half-open property may still generate some rent while buying time. Because a dark and abandoned property can lose value faster and create political pressure faster. Because lenders may prefer modification to foreclosure and fire sale liquidation. Because the owner may want to preserve redevelopment options without triggering a worse outcome too early. All of those reasons can make limbo more profitable than collapse. This is why the phrase dead mall can be misleading. Some of these sites are not truly retail businesses anymore. They are transition assets, waiting to become something else. They sit between the old use and the next use, and that middle stage can last a long time. To the public, that delay can look irrational. To the people reading the balance sheet, it can look completely logical. The mall is no longer mainly a place where shoppers vote with their wallets. It becomes a legal puzzle, a tax puzzle, a debt puzzle, and a land puzzle. And as long as the answer to those puzzles is not settled, the property often stays partly alive. Another big reason some failures are still worth millions is simple acreage. The parking fields alone can represent massive development potential. Those paved acres can become apartments, hotels, clinics, restaurants, or business spaces over time. In many suburbs, assembling a site that large from separate pieces would be nearly impossible. The mall site already exists as one giant opportunity. That is why the ugliest part of the mall may actually be the most valuable part. Not the food court, not the old-fashioned stores, the land and layout. Rebranding also matters more than it first appears. Developers increasingly stop using the word mall because it sounds commercially stale in many markets. Instead, the site gets renamed a district, center, or mixed-use neighborhood. That language shift tells you what is really happening. The owner is not trying to bring back the 1990s. The owner is trying to extract value from a large, well-located piece of real estate. And if that takes years of slow change, the property may remain open in a weak form the whole time. This is the hidden story behind those eerie buildings with a few lights still on. They are often not surviving because the old model still works. They are surviving because shutting down fast can destroy too much optionality. Optionality means the future choices still attached to the land. A shabby mall can still hold future rights to build housing, healthcare, hotels, and new commercial uses. Those rights can be worth more than the current shopping activity ever was. So when people ask why dead malls refuse to die, the answer is not nostalgia. The answer is that they stopped functioning as malls long before they stopped functioning as assets. Once you see that, the empty parking lot tells a different story. It is not just decline. It is a long, expensive, and often profitable transition. Watch our next video on mixed-use redevelopment, because that is where many of these old mall sites are heading next.